The Greek historian Herodotus wrote that Greece had a faithful friend in poverty. A strange thing to say about a land that was considered glorious, proud, undefeatable, elegant and cultured, but an accurate one. Many Greeks earned their livelihood through trade, others with fine crafts, but the barren and infertile Greek soil actually produced very little. From the 8th century BC, the Greeks started emigrating mostly westwards towards Italy and Sicily, a fertile land in the middle of Mediterranean sea lanes and an ideal position for trading. While excavating on Sicily, archaeologists have found numerous buildings in the interior of the countryside and have concluded that around the middle of the 4th century BC, many cities expanded into new districts and suburbs, often far from the coast. What was the cause of this population explosion and shift in locations? By consulting ancient sources, particularly Plutarch's writings, scholars discovered that in 339 BC, the Greek colonies on Sicily defeated the Phoenician colonies in the west in the Battle of Himera. Laying the foundations of their supremacy on the island and calling upon their homeland for strong men to colonize the island. One of the issues long debated among archaeologists is whether the first settlers, the pioneers who came to Sicily, were peaceful explorers who lived in harmony with the local inhabitants, the Sicanians, or did they forcefully take control of the best land on the island? According to the accounts of ancient historians, the Greeks were a belligerent people, unlike the Phoenicians, who also settled on the island, although only for trade purposes. Greek settlers were described as being intent on owning arable land. While the Phoenicians built emporiums along the coast and were not interested in the interior, the Greeks tended to expand and take military control over vast areas. Ortygia is a small island next to Sicily, and the first settlement of what would become the largest Sicilian colony of ancient times, Syracuse. Excavations under the present-day cathedral there, which incorporated the Greek temple of Athena, led to the discovery of an ancient indigenous colony, supplanted in the 8th century BC by a Greek colony. Archaeologists were able to pinpoint the date after studying the type of pottery they found. Studies revealed that Greek settlers had driven out the native Sicanian peoples, conquered the city of Syracuse, and expanded beyond Ortygia into the mainland. The building boom the Greeks initiated may be found to this day in the quarries that were later used to keep prisoners of war. But people weren't constantly at war on Sicily. There were long, peaceful periods during which Greek settlers exchanged products and compared their artwork with Phoenician settlers and the Sicanians, keeping the island humming with a prolific cultural exchange. In the 4th century BC, Syracuse was an enormous city, with mighty fortresses and numerous monuments elegantly decorated. Among the most famous pieces is a Gorgon mask and the Venus Landolina. Across the canal on the mainland was the second part of the city, a city that had become the largest and most important in Sicily. In what is presumed to be the more recent quarters of the city, archaeologists discovered a theatre. Strange inscriptions engraved in stone appeared at various points. All the graffiti had something in common, names of gods and famous kings. But what was the relationship between them? Systematic excavation of the theatre and reliefs revealed a strange symmetry between the points where the inscriptions were found. The names had been engraved to distinguish the theatre's various sections and seating arrangements. It was here that the premiere of one of the most representative dramas of Greek culture, The Persians by Aeschylus, was held. A play about the great victory of the Greek city-states, united for once, over the militarily strong Persians, whom the Greeks defined as barbaric and lacking culture. The premiere at Syracuse meant that Sicily had become, over time, an integral part of Greece. After all, Aeschylus, like Archimedes, was a Siciliot, a Sicilian Greek, and spent most of his life at this theatre. Above all, the theatre symbolized Greek culture and its presence on Sicily. The Phoenicians, on the other hand, were primarily devoted to trade and spent little time on literature. And the Romans, who arrived later, preferred the oval-shaped amphitheatre where they could watch gladiators in action. The world's highest concentration of ancient Greek theatres is not in Greece at all, but on Sicily, where culture was associated with wealth. This one, at Tindari, opens towards the sky, giving a sense of how the Greeks attempted to create dramatic visual impact and intensify the pathos of their tragedies. One of the most spectacular theatres on Sicily is the one at Taormina, dug into a promontory overhanging the sea. This one at Catania, at the foot of Mount Etna, is part of the city landscape. At the other end of the island is Agrigento, a valley studded with temples, many of which are still standing. The temple of Castor and Pollux, the Dioscuri, was rebuilt using original materials. What is the reason behind such a concentration of majestic public works? The most important temples, the Temple of Concordia and the imposing Temple of Zeus Olympus, decorated with telamonies, huge figures used as pillars over 23 feet high, were erected only a few years apart, around the middle of the 5th century BC.